Hi there, everyone. Welcome to The Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's June 4th. Ground cover roses. I had someone ask me about them recently. You know, they're fantastic for a rose that has a low spreading habit, but they're really not a classic ground cover in terms of their ability to crowd out weeds. I used to grow this rose called the fairy, which is a pink rose. It blooms all summer long. It's a ground cover rose, and it would amble over this brick garden wall that I had, and I absolutely loved it. It sent out these long tentacles, kind of like an octopus, and all the way down the arm were these beautiful pink blooms. It's a great rose, tons of thorns, but it didn't stop the Canadian thistle or any other weed that decided to make its home among the branches. Here's today's brevities. On this day in 1738, King George III was born. He's the one who appointed Capability Brown as the royal gardener and planned for the redesign of the Richmond Gardens and Kew in 1764. It's the anniversary of the death of Dr. Nathanial Bagshaw Ward, who died on this day in 1868. Ward developed the first terrarium in 1829 when he accidentally grew a fern in an insect jar. It was quite by accident. A fern spore had gotten into the jar. Ward was using it to observe insect behavior. And when the jar was sealed, the spore grew into a plant. Ward suddenly realized that if plants were enclosed in airtight glass cases, they could survive without watering for long periods of time. And that's how the Wardian case came to be. Wardian cases were very simply constructed out of wood and glass. They looked like little portable greenhouses that could be put on the deck of a ship. They had to sit on the deck of the ship and not placed down below in cargo because Wardian cases needed the sunlight to hit the glass in order to create the perfect microenvironment for plants. The cases were an enclosed system. The side flaps that would open to allow plants to be placed inside would close before starting their long voyage. They would get nailed down and then get tar paint applied to seal the case. The plants inside would be in pots or there would be soil on the bottom of the case. It was a game changer for plant explorers. The plants lived on the ship in the cases for 6 to 12 months. On this day in 1997, the great plant anatomist extraordinaire Katherine Esau died. Her early work was dedicated to thwarting the curly top virus in beets and other plants. I found an early newspaper account of her work, and the headline was, "Girl to Conduct Beet Experiments." Professor and plant biologist Bill Lucas said this about Esau. Katherine Esau's work is the Webster's of plant biology. It's encyclopedic. Her prose is elegant and precise. When you read her publications, you're at the microscope with her. You see what she's seen. If my students and I have a disagreement about cell definition, I turn to Esau's work to settle it. In Unearthed Words, today's words are by Sarah Martha Baker, who was an English botanist and ecologist. Baker's family had a house on an island, which was the backdrop to her first introduction to seaweed. When she was a little girl, Baker had noticed that different kinds of seaweed lived in different tidal limits. Baker's theory was that the seaweed boundaries were determined by competition, with faster growing seaweeds taking control in areas with deeper water, while slower growing seaweeds were found in shallower water and had the advantage of being more resistant to drying out. Academically, Baker had a passion for art as well. Before pursuing botany, she studied for a time at the Slade School of Art, which is why her scientific illustrations were so excellent. Tragically, she died young at the age of 29. Her Quaker Sunday school class recalled her saying, "The universe is always singing, and we must learn to listen so that our heart may join the universal chorus." Today's book recommendation is Paradise Under Glass by Ruth Kassinger, a book Nathanial Bagshaw Ward would have approved of. Paradise Under Glass is a witty, absorbing memoir about one woman's unlikely desire to build, stock, and tend a small conservatory in her suburban Maryland home. Kassinger decided to build the small conservatory in her home to help deal with profound changes in her life at middle age. Her children were growing up and leaving the nest, a dear friend died, and she had to confront her own health issues. She said, "Warm and humid, beautiful, evergreen, peaceful and still. A conservatory would be the perfect antidote to the losses and changes of middle age. I was determined to have one." Today's garden chore is to plant your peony high. The most important thing to remember is not to plant them too deeply. If you do that, they may actually fail to flower. So if you have a peony that didn't flower this year, that's probably why. They need to be lifted up. In order to set those flower buds, the roots should only be about 2 to 3 inches below the soil line. Now, it might feel odd to have them sitting up that high, but peonies have to experience a chill in order to attain dormancy and to set their buds. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. When I was researching Katherine Esau, I discovered that she was born in Ekaterinoslav in the Ukraine. Both she and her hometown were named after Catherine the Great. One of her former students described her as having a stately, elegant demeanor reminiscent of Ingrid Bergman's in the film Anastasia. Although she came across as very dignified, she was apparently very relatable and funny. Don't forget, she was studying plant viruses, and she once gave a lecture titled "The Saga of Vladimir the Virus and the Sad Fate of Norman the Nucleus." And here's something I found particularly charming about Katherine Esau. Many of her lectures began with her signature opening, "Once upon a time," and her students referred to them as Esau's Fables. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up, and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.